Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you here. Those that are here in person and streaming on live stream. Hi, Mom. Oh, wait, Dr. Connor, I don't want to see ourselves on the live stream. No, I don't. That's super distracting. Anyways. So we're so excited that you're here. We're going to talk about our favorite topic to talk about, which is women and women's health and hormones, and how to create happy, healthy, balanced hormones to make the most out of our life. So little housekeeping, those that are live streaming right now, you can drop any questions you have in the chat. Dr. Connor will be in the back answering any questions that you may have. He can also ask us those questions later. There will be a time at the end for Q&A, so you're welcome to kind of save those questions as well. But without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and jump in because we have a lot to talk about tonight. So,
all right, just going to start out with a little intro, like our story and how we found the Wellness Way in chiropractic. So my name is Kylie. I'm currently an intern here at the Wellness Way Sarasota. I'm about to finish up my chiropractic degree from St. Louis, from Logan University. But a little bit about me, I'm actually from Plankinton, South Dakota, so actually way away from here. And I did exercise science at South Dakota State, so South Dakota was my home. And now I'm in Florida here with plans to stay with the Wellness Way Sarasota here as an associate doc. Mm-hmm. So first, what brought me to the Wellness Way? So with like chiropractic in general, I had whiplash issues from competitive cheer. And by getting adjusted and stuff, I was able to kind of find myself again, like less headaches, less tension. And then it led me into, all the chronic stress and the muscle tension. Okay. And then I was like, okay, why am I always fatigued, exhausted? Well, then I found the Wellness Way and learned how so many things that we see are like so common are actually not normal, and that there were answers for me. So I had really bad, heavy, irregular periods. Like that first day, didn't want to get out of bed. And then just like completely exhausted in the morning, like snooze my alarm 10 times if I could, and last minute, like rush to school, right? Constipation, bloating, you name it, just a lot of like issues that I just kind of suppressed and didn't think about. And then I even was told I had high cholesterol, like genetically, and that they wanted to put me on a preventative statin at like 20 years old, just for prevention. And so once I learned how much cholesterol did in the body, I learned I wasn't deficient in medication. My body was trying to heal. So that's a little bit about me. And then I'll let Dr. Jen take it away.
All right, a little bit about my story. I'm Dr. Jennifer. I'm one of the associate chiropractors at the Wellness Way Sarasota here at this office. I interned here all throughout last summer, and then started working here full-time in January. So it's been amazing. A little bit about me. I got my bachelor's in exercise science in Appalachian State University. So I'm from North Carolina. I'm a Carolina girl. And then I got my doctor of chiropractic at Life University in Atlanta, Georgia. I was on the path to PA school for the longest time, ever since I was in high school. That was always the dream, to be a PA in dermatology. And it really wasn't until I had a lot of health issues of my own, ended up finding the Wellness Way, working for Wellness Way doctors, and ended up like, this is what I want to do. I want to help heal and empower women to restore their health back to how it was designed to be. We believe the body was designed for wellness, not for illness. And so we just have to kind of get out of its way, right? So a little bit about kind of my story. So with my health, so I've been an athlete my entire life. I played every sport. I grew up playing, I was a 3-sport athlete all throughout middle school and high school. So I was very, very fit and loved sports, all that kind of stuff. At one point I was junior year of high school. I lost my period for 6 months. And at the time I was like, this is amazing. Like, love this so much. But now that I know what I know, that was truly the beginning of a lot of my hormonal issues that ended up happening. So more about my story. So jump scare, sorry, 2014. So back when I had, so that was like a couple years after I lost my period for a couple months. I was in college, ended up having really, really bad acne, never had acne in my life, and ended up kind of wreaking just havoc on my just my health and my face and all that kind of stuff. So I ended up going to the infirmary in college, and I told them about what was going on. They're like, oh, let's just put you on birth control, low dose birth control, because you got acne, right? It's a hormonal related thing. Handed out like candy, and I was on birth control for the following 5 to 6 years, right? And no idea kind of what the consequences were, no idea. But the reality was it cleared my acne up because it was a hormonal issue. So they were right about that. It's just their approach is a little different than ours. Cut to about 5 years later. And when I was in 2019 to 2021, I was having all kinds of issues. So I was having severe acid reflux, heartburn, silent reflux. At one point, I was in so much pain that I had to drive myself to the ER, and I just couldn't swallow. It was terrible. They gave me a steroid. They're like, oh, it's strep and flu season. It's probably that. When in reality, it was actually my GI that was having all the issues. I had chronic pain. I had never experienced true depression before in my life until this time. I had suicidal ideation because I was chronically in pain. It felt like the only way out was the end, right? I had zero energy. I remember the job I was working at the time. I was almost fired from my job because I was late to work so many times. I literally was like threatened termination because I was late to work, but I was so exhausted in the mornings. I was tired and wired at night, but then when I would go to wake up in the morning, I was a zombie. Like it literally thought I was trying to be resurrect myself to start the day, right? I was always bloated. So these pictures, these three here, after working out, I was chronically bloated. Just no matter what I ate, like I could look at food and I'm just like pregnant. I remember taking this picture here and like trying to like coping mechanism was like, let me just pretend like I'm actually pregnant. I have a little baby in here. And I was like, oh, like, look, imagining one day when I'm pregnant, what it's going to look like. Cause that was literally my life. I was chronically bloated. And I was about 15, 20 pounds heavier than I am now. So at that point too, I had really had a hard time losing weight, which was like very different than what I'm used to. I've been fit and in shape my entire life, never had any kind of weight issues. And then suddenly I'm like 24, 25, cannot, no matter what I do, cannot lose weight. And I'm really grateful for this time because one, it led me to where I'm at now. But I remember at that time thinking when women would talk about like, oh, I can't lose weight no matter what I do. And I remember thinking like, you just got to work out harder. You just got to eat better. And that's on you, babe. And then I'm in that situation where I'm like, I'm literally doing all the right things and I cannot lose weight. If anything, I'm gaining weight. I had excessive digestive issues, constipation, once again, heartburn, reflux, all those kind of things. I got an endoscopy and biopsy in my stomach, just came back mild gastritis, no answers for me. And then I was diagnosed with PCOS in 2021. So I was on all kinds of medications. I was on birth control, Zantac, a PPI, nasal spray, Tums, ibuprofen, Midol. I had all, a whole fun little array of medicines that I would just kind of use on the regular at like mid-20s, just having all these kind of issues. I ended up finding the Wellness Way, and the Wellness Way found me really. And I ended up working for two Wellness Way doctors who are chiropractors. They ended up helping me restore my health back to homeostasis and giving me answers. And that was the biggest thing. And that's what we love about the Wellness Way is we give people hope, not just answers and understanding, but we give people hope because there's so many times you go to your PCPs and they're like, we don't know what's going on. Like here's a medication, and there's just no hope for you, right? So they gave me hope. And I've been a part of the Wellness Way now for 4 or 5 years. And then, here I am as a Wellness Way practitioner and, very, very different health-wise. I have managed and overcome my GERD, my PCOS, all that kind of stuff. And I'm a living testimony. And that's the reason I'm where I'm at now is because I'm so passionate about this stuff because I'm a living experience of just kind of this lived experience of, really, really bad health to true healing without any medications, without any drugs, anything like that. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Listen to your body when it whispers so you don't have to hear it scream. So this is something now looking back at like my journey, right? I can see now my body was speaking to me in all these little ways. That's the thing is our body's always speaking to us. We just have to be in tune with our body enough to know to listen. And we want to make sure we're listening to our body when it whispers so it doesn't get to a point where it's screaming, right? And what are some of those whispers? So is this my slide or your slide? My slide? Okay. So these are some examples. I'm sure we could all look up here and see like all kinds of stuff that we could all five off the top, just like, oh, I relate to this. These are examples, the bloating, the acne, the mood swings, the constipation, all these kind of things that have been so normalized, especially in women. Like this is just part of being a woman. It sucks. Like, we're crazy and we're this and we're that. And it's like, no. This is your body speaking to you. Something is wrong. There's imbalances going on. We need to figure out why. But we want to make sure we are listening to these whispers before they get to screams, which is stuff like this.
100%. All right. So I just wanted to start us off with a few stats about women's health. So right now, PCOS, 5 to 10% most common cause of infertility right now. And then we've got endometriosis, a little bit higher at 10 to 20%. And PMS, so everyone's heard of PMS, right? We've got 20 to 30% there. Lack of sex drive, that's huge for women sometimes. That's at 43%. Fibroids, so 30% at the age of 35, and then it only goes up from there to age 50 at 80%. 80% of people. Infertility, 1 in 8. And that goes for both female and male. Horrible menopause. So, the goal is to get there, right? But not feel terrible. Horrible menopause is at 75% right now with horrible hot flashes. Mm-hmm. And then, so like any kind of of these hormone imbalances, you're going to struggle with menopause down the road. So we got to start taking care of ourselves now so we don't even have to get there.
Yep.
A few more things here on the next slide. So this is just an article that kind of talked about how menstrual pain is increasing more and more. And this isn't something that we should be dealing with on the basis. 30% have irregular cycles already. 80% just undesirable symptoms, right? Everybody just starts to dread their period when everything's painful. Mm-hmm. And yeah, over 84% people, painful cycles. So how many people a lot.
Yes, majority of women.
So yeah, we've come to just accept this abnormal cycle, this pain rhythm that comes with the period, and we're here to tell you that that is not normal.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right. So typically when you go into your doctor and, oh, I have really bad cramps, bad cycles, bad all this kind of stuff, they go for birth control. That is kind of their one-stop shop as far as, we don't know what's going on. Let's just give you this drug. Hopefully that clears things up and send you on your way. So 62% of women of reproductive age are on a hormonal birth control. I'm sure many of us in this room have either are currently on birth control or have been on birth control in our past, all of that. More than half of birth control users, however, 58% utilize birth control for reasons outside of not wanting to even have a baby. So not even for birth control, right? Not even for contraceptive reasons. I was one of them. 31% are on birth control for menstrual pain, cramps, 28% to regulate their cycle, 14% for acne, so like myself, 4% for endometriosis, 11% for unspecified reasons. And the reality is it's one thing to hand out this medication, and it's another thing to do so without giving you a proper understanding of what birth control is really doing and the potential side effects. I was 19 years old and I was handed birth control and it cleared up my acne and I was happy, but I had no idea that this was going to affect my fertility later down the line. I had no idea that my body was just going to synthetically take this hormone for so long and it stops producing it itself. So, and the risk factors as well. In the 1970s, they realized estrogen increases fibrinogen, and thus there was a huge relationship between estrogen pills and blood clots. Typically, birth control has progestin in it, or progesterone and estrogen as well, but mine was. And they have now realized there's a huge relationship between birth control and blood clots. I have one of my literal best friends. She was 26 years old. She was on two different types of birth control because of her PCOS, and she ended up having 2 pulmonary embolisms. Was in the ER, went to overnight, had 2 blood clots because of birth control. And so she's since been off of that. But it's just tragic to see a mid-20s-year-old woman experiencing this. More on birth control. So basically how birth control works is your body is so smart. When you're taking in birth control, you're taking in synthetic hormone. So your body's so smart that it's like, oh, you're giving me hormone. I don't need to produce it, right? So it stops producing any hormone of its own. So when it comes to our hormones in our cycle, our brain, our pituitary gland is communicating to our ovaries to produce hormone, is producing certain hormones to communicate to our ovaries to produce hormone, and that affects everything else, right? So ultimately, when we're taking birth control, our brain shuts off that communication between our ovaries. And that in and of itself, like, who wants to shut off a natural communication in our body, right? To produce hormones, suppresses own production to post-menopausal levels, so super, super low, and ultimately stops ovulation. So when we're on birth control, we're not actually really ovulating. And that's the thing is, with our cycle, ovulation is the main event. It's not the menstruation. It's not the bleeding, right? We think that's what it's all about. That our period is really more so about, our cycle is more so about ovulation, because that's kind of the whole point, is to be able, as women, we have this amazing superpower to create a baby inside of us, and that's what our cycle is about, right? So another way that birth control kind of stops birth control, is it thickens cervical mucus to prevent passage of sperm and changes the endometrium so implantation cannot occur. So that's the thing too, is when I was told this too, is just like, oh, well, be on this birth control, then when you want to have a baby someday, online, just pop up birth control and you'll be good to go. And it's just simply not the way it works. You get off birth control and now your brain has stopped communicating between your brain and your ovaries for 5, 10, 15 years. I had a patient last week she was on birth. She had a cycle at 13 years old, 2 cycles that were really, really painful. She was an athlete like I was. And then they put her on birth control and it was affecting her sports, right? It was her affecting being an athlete. Put her on birth control and she was on birth control for 15 years. So she had 2 regular cycles just on her own. And then she was on birth control for 13 to 28. Now she's been off for a couple of years and now having all these issues, acne, she's getting married soon. She wants to have babies, all these kinds of issues. And her brain has not been communicating between her brain and her ovaries for 15 years. And we're expecting it to bounce back like that. And it's just not how that happens. So.
All right, so I'm just going to jump into kind of a foundational principle of the wellness way. So the fireman carpenter principle essentially is, okay, I want you to imagine your house at home is on fire, right? It's burning down. Who are you going to call? You're going to call the fire department, right? That's emergency, right? So after it's done, put out, then who are you going to call? You're not going to call the fire department to come in with their axes and their fire hoses, right? To put things back together. You're going to call the carpenter. So we can put this into like the approach of the health system as well. So our firemen people are our medical system, right? They're there to put out fires. Imagine you're having a heart attack. You're going to go to the ER. You're not going to come to a chiropractor, right? Please don't. It does happen sometimes. But then again, when it comes to rebuilding, you call the carpenter, right? You're not going for drugs and surgery to fix the issue. You need to lay the foundation again and make sure it's safe and secure for yourself to live in, like a house, okay? So I want you to imagine when you're going and trying to rebuild that foundation, you're coming to a health restoration doc that knows how to store and replenish the body from the inside out. So
another example of just kind of tagging on birth control. So that fireman carpenter approach, I just want to say that we are not anti-medication. We're not anti-surgery. There's definitely a time and place when there's an acute issue going on. Like you said, like you're having a heart attack, go to the ER, like open it up, whatever you have to do, right? But this idea of here's a prescription drug, take it for the rest of your life. That is where we don't align. So fireman carpenter principle, where it applies is like, we don't know what's going on. Here's a medication to put away your symptoms just quickly, and then one and done kind of deal. So whereas our approach is obviously different.
And then this is another foundational principle for us. So imagine your body is like a Swiss watch. Okay, we've got all these different gears spinning. We've got this master gear here. And I want you to think of this like the nervous system in the middle being that master coordinator affecting everything. And then you've got all these systems surrounding it, whether it's the cardiovascular system, your digestive system, your hormones, your endocrine system, everything is connected. So as soon as one of those gears starts to kind of slow down, maybe there's a little rock in there or something like that, it's going to affect the whole chain. Same with our health. As soon as you start to slow down one of those systems, it's going to affect others.
Yep. All right, so ladies, did you know we are, as a cycling female, we are 4 different women each month? Did we all know that? So we're all split personality disorder over here. No, so we're 4 different women, and Dr. Patrick always talks about like men, when you marry a woman on your wedding day, you should say, I do, I do, I do, I do, because you're marrying 4 different women. And that's simply because hormonally we are genuinely 4 different women. It changes kind of who we are, our personality, our energy levels, all of it. Our passion, our just motivation, all that kind of stuff. So we are women. Here is an example of a 28-day female hormonal cycle. So throughout the month, we have a follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, menstruation. So you can see here, these are hormones that are secreted by the brain that are fluctuating each month. These are hormones that are secreted by the ovaries that are fluctuating each month, right? So the woman that we are right here is different than the woman we are here because of our hormones. Same thing as like what's happening even in our uterus and all that kind of stuff too. So I like to think of it like as women, we are like the moon. And so every month the moon is different. There's waxing and waning. We're different phases of who we are. Same thing, there are times of the month. Every month there's a full moon. Every month there's a new moon, right? So that's kind of just the analogy there. Whereas men are like the sun, and they have a 24-hour male testosterone cycle. So we are sunshine in the back there with Dr. Connor. So the male hormonal cycle, this is just over a day. So this is like midnight, testosterone is depleted, 6 a.m. testosterone is peaked, and then kind of tapering a little bit around noon, and then it goes down a lot, tremendously around towards evening and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with the sun, starts low in the sunrise, and then the sun rises up, and then it's kind of peak, and same kind of thing. So we are the moon, they are the sun, we work in conjunction with one another. But my main takeaway here is that we are not, here's an example. So throughout the month, men are like this, just like their little testosterone, that's all it. They're not all these big kind of whatever going on. Whereas our female hormone cycle, same thing over the span of a month, we got all kinds of things happening, right? So we have to understand and work with our body and not work against it. We simply are designed physiologically, we're very, very different. So we can't expect to behave and run and work the same way a man can. This kind of grind hustle culture, it's a beautiful thing, but as women, we have to do it differently than men can. So that's kind of the main takeaway there.
All right, so when you saw that chart there, you kind of saw how, different hormones peaked at different times. So imagine when your estrogen's a peak versus your progesterone's a peak, you're going to feel different. It's a different hormone that's heavily circulating in your body. So I want to dive in a little bit about the menstrual cycle and our different phases. So first one, menstrual phase, people get a period, right? That's what we think of as our menstrual cycle. Well, this is where the uterine lining begins to shed. That's why you bleed. And this is why you feel some of that fatigue, right? You're losing some blood. You want to make sure you're properly hydrating, keeping the fluids going. And then this is a time that's good for low intensity movement. So whether that's yoga or just going for a walk. I know it can kind of feel like hard those first couple of days. So just going for an intentional 20-minute walk at your own pace. But just promoting that circulation and recovery through it all. You want to keep that blood flowing. And then you also want to keep inflammation low. That can be heavily associated with a lot of those pain cycles that come with like the cramps and stuff. So keeping inflammation low in some different ways, which we hear. Follicular phase. So this is like the time to go, go, go. This is the time when you probably feel the best throughout the month. Your estrogen levels are rising. So if you remember that chart, estrogen was like really high. That's going to make you like ready to go. Like you can like handle things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's better insulin sensitivity, you're able to digest better, you're metabolizing better, maybe you feel skinnier, like you're happier during this time. Your endurance is going to be better, your strength performance. So maybe that's when you can do a bit of PR at the gym and you feel great. Your estrogen levels, they're also going to support muscle recovery too. So maybe you won't feel quite as sore either, which is great. Coordination, you're more motivated. So this is the time when you want to take on tasks at work, right? When you have this big project or, just different things that you're doing there. Try to plan those big things around this time. And then high intensity workouts, like I said, that's when you can really go, high intensity. Maybe even get 2 workouts a day. Like that's when you can like really support yourself, but make sure to replenish as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then energy levels are usually higher, like I said before. And so you can just really look at it too. Ovulation. So this is that main event that she was talking about when you're actually releasing an egg from your ovaries. And this is when you may need to kind of calm down just a little bit, take it a little easier. Your progesterone is going to start to rise instead of that estrogen. It can be a little more sensitive that way. So it should kind of help come up to support the energy levels. But sometimes when we're under this high stress, progesterone can actually go down into our stress pathway, cortisol, and then we're losing this bucket of progesterone. And so now our energy is tanking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to manage your stress during this time and really saving that energy for yourself so your hormones can do what they're supposed to do. We'll go into this next one here. So luteal. So this is the one, it's a little bit longer. It's right after ovulation and then right before you get your period. So this one, your progesterone should be higher as long as cortisol isn't stealing it all. Your estrogen will fluctuate a little bit again. So you might feel a little bit of a boost of energy again to kind of go hit the gym again. Metabolism's going to be better again. Insulin resistance is going to be better. Exercise performance. And then higher progesterone can actually increase your sex drive as well. So that's interesting. It can be a little bit of fatigue, fluid retention. So that might be a time maybe you do feel a little bit bloated, but it shouldn't be like massively bloated, right? Like we're used to when we think of PMS. But this is the phase that a lot of people deal with that PMS. Heavy bloating, heavy cramping, those mood swings. None of that should be normal in this phase.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. All right, menopause. So those are our ladies that are no longer cycling anymore. So menopause should be a time, a really wonderful time for a woman's life. And unfortunately, it has gotten to a point where we think that you're not cycling anymore, so we're having all kinds of issues. That's typically associated with hot flashes is a big one, just sweating, all that kind of stuff. And this is something that we want to make sure as we are as we're cycling. The reality is we're cycling women. We have all these hormonal issues and all this kind of stuff. If we go when we go into menopause, we will end up having like a terrible menopausal experience as well. It's not just like, oh, we just shut off all hormones. The reality is our hormones don't go away; they just get a lot lower than when we're cycling, and there's no longer that that cycle every month or that period every month, right? But it should be a great time. So this is an example of, once again, menopause is not a disease; it is a stage of life. So we start with our childhood years up to about 13. When we get into, then we start puberty, right? So then we're in our cycling years, our cyclic years. So we're cycling, like we were just talking about. But then at some point, around 55, it's different for everyone. We get to our menopausal years. So once again, hormones are not gone. Hormones are just a lot lower, and there's a lot of things we can still run hormones on for women in their menopausal years, or around kind of perimenopause. Menopause is a big term a lot of people talk about too. It's just something they're transitioning from cycling to menopause and all that kind of stuff. The reality is, though, it's a lot of time when women have really bad menopause kind of symptoms and just are miserable, they go to the doctor and they recommend a hysterectomy. 600,000 hysterectomies are performed in the United States each year. This makes it the second most common surgery for women after C-section. So this is something that is, once again, time and place, right? I'm not saying every hysterectomy was unnecessary, but 600,000 a year, it gets to a point where it's like, let's dive a little deeper and not just, we don't know what's going on, let's just take the whole organ out, as if God didn't give us this organ for a reason. But there are definitely things, if you do have your uterus out or know anyone does, we can definitely support your body in a lot of ways too. And this is the thing with our organs are making our hormones. Which 3 organs are making our hormones? Ovaries, obviously, make our hormones as cycling women. So our brain kind of communicates to our ovaries to produce hormone. Our adrenals, though, our adrenals produce hormone as well. So it's really, really important. Kind of our stress organs, because it produces cortisol, all of that as well. And then fat tissue is what can produce hormone as well. So this is why when women have kind of like a lot of issues with their ovaries and their imbalances, all that kind of stuff. But then on top of that, their adrenals. Their adrenals are shot because we're stressed out and we work too much, and the kids, all this stuff, just super, super stressed. That's why it ends up our body not producing hormones properly. That's why our body's like, I still need to produce hormone. I'm going to hold on to all this fat because I need to make more estrogen, right? And so that's why, especially with women who are in menopause, their ovaries are no longer producing that hormone for them. And then if they haven't taken care of their adrenals, that's why sometimes when women enter menopause, they gain a lot of weight, or they end up not being able to lose weight. Same thing with women who get hysterectomies. They end up getting their uterus out. They feel amazing, and then suddenly they're gaining all this weight, and they can't lose weight. Same kind of thing. So menopause expectations versus reality. Our expectations kind of in just the world as far as what menopause is hot flashes, fatigue, hair loss, mood swings, weight gain, HRT. Hormone replacement therapy is becoming a very, very common thing. I have, pump calls that'll call like, hey, do you guys do HRT there? And we're like, no, we help you figure out why your body's not producing hormone, what's in the way of that. Osteopenia, calcium supplements. Reality with the Wellness Way is we focus on supporting the adrenals. So any woman that's in here right now that's in menopause or approaching menopause, we want to make sure we're supporting your adrenals, we're supporting your stress. Regular intentional exercise, herbal support, and individualized supplementation as needed for you, and balance hormones naturally through a balanced diet, all kinds of things as well. So just remember, menopause is meant to be a beautiful time in a woman's life. You have made it, your cycling years, no longer have to worry about tampons and pads and this and that. But just remember, just because it's common does not mean it's normal. I don't think I even mentioned that earlier. Just because menopause, this kind of symptoms that arise with menopause for a lot of women in the US is common does not mean it's normal. So common and normal do not mean the same thing. Just because doesn't mean that has to be our reality too.
All right, so now that we've talked about each of the cycles or each of the phases in the cycle, I want to dive into okay, now how do we support this a little bit more, right? So how do we support every person, so all four of us in that cycle? But before I do that, I want to mention that caring for your cycle is caring for yourself, right? Miserable cycle, miserable self. So we need to take care of ourselves when it comes to this. So first, you got to find your cycle. Not everybody's really good at tracking it. You're like, maybe I'll mark it on the calendar the day I started. But it's really important to kind of track how long it is, and even just how it's doing, right? Are you feeling miserable the first day? Are you feeling really energized? Things can be really good to track too, to kind of see how your hormones are doing. But another way you can do it, instead of guessing with that, you can also test it. So this needle right here, you can literally pee on a stick every morning, and it shows you where your hormones are at that day. Helps you figure out ovulation as well. Another thing that's a little bit cheaper is your LH strips. Those you can get off Amazon, really good options. Pee on that again, kind of watch till your LH spikes, and then you know you're going to ovulate right after that. Then there's also a Dutch cycle mapping. So this one, a lot of peeing, I get it, but you pee on a stick again every day, and it gives you this chart here and shows you all your different hormone metabolites throughout the month. And it's your hormones, right? It's not just a guess. It's not just something thinking what your hormones are doing. It gives you answers, especially if you're not ovulating, struggling with infertility, all those kinds of things. And then there's just the simple app. If you're looking for something free, you can't quite invest into something more expensive. This is something I use right now. It's called the Lively app. There's a lot out there. But I really like this one because it lets me enter, how heavy your cycle is. It gives you a rating of how energetic you're feeling that day, maybe if you have some pain, but it also gives you ideas of how you should exercise that day. So it's kind of like a little cheat code to kind of help you remind you to nourish, eat more, move, and then
So, and then what I use to track my cycle is the Aura Ring, and I would love to be sponsored by them, but I'm not, but I should be, because the amount of women I've gotten sold Aura Rings to, I should get a percentage. So this is the Aura Ring. I have one on right now. This is kind of an older generation, but it's Bluetooth that ties to your phone, app of your phone, and the same thing. It tracks your HRV, it tracks your sleep, it tracks your steps, all kinds of things. And then they have worked with the app called Natural Cycles that you can essentially sync your temperature, because it tracks your temperature. Because that's a big thing with tracking your cycle is noting your temperature changes. So then it ties to Natural Cycles. That's a really, really great form of actual birth control, but doing it naturally. So, because the reality is, women, we can only get pregnant around 6 days out of each month. It's not like every day we could get pregnant. So we want to kind of dial in there. But I love the Aura Ring, and it's just kind of, if you're lazy like me, you don't want to wake up and take a thermometer in your mouth or pee on a stick or whatever. These are ways you can do kind of just track your cycle and get more in tune with your body. And you'd be surprised, the more you get in tune with your cycle, the more you really do, it sounds cheesy, but the more you really do get in tune with yourself, and give yourself a lot of grace through each season or through each cycle, right? With a lot of my patients, my female patients, on a first new patient exam, I ask them, do you track your cycle? And if they're like, oh, like, nah, I make sure they leave knowing I need you tracking your cycle, and not just like mark your calendar, like I started bleeding this day, but like I want to, because I asked, do you know when you're ovulating, like that's kind of stuff. Because also too, when it comes to blood work, we do it around your cycle as well. So other options as far as cycling female hormone tips, and also, well, actually, we'll keep moving forward. So hormone fluctuations and exercise habits. So if you are a gym girly like me, once again, I've been an athlete my entire life. I love to work out, but the reality is we just can't train like a dude. And I would love it if I could just train like a dude every day, not worry about it. But we have to kind of be more in tune with our cycle and understand it's going to work against us and against our hormones if we don't kind of cater to our cycle. So once again, bringing back this chart, just reminding everyone all the differences in our hormones throughout the month. So for days 1 through 7, this is when we're menstruating. This is when we are bleeding, right? So we do want to take it a little lower, to a little slower, lower. It's doing stretching, light yoga. We still want to move our body though. There's never a time where I'm like, just do nothing. Like, no. I'm a big proponent of walking is huge, especially for women. It's low intensity, steady state is more catered towards fat loss anyway. So fat loss is something that you want to kind of cater towards anyways. It's more walking than the high intensity training, all that kind of stuff. But when we get into days 17 through 14, we're in our follicular state. That's when I say we can train like a dude. So that's when you say go hard, high intensity, hit circuits, like all that kind of stuff. This is when you can kind of handle stress better. It's the best time to lose weight as well. Because there are times I know I'm like, I wear the same gym fit like once every week, and my body looks different every week. And I just don't understand. So I'd like to compare my body more towards like follicular gen versus next month's follicular gen kind of thing. Track it like that versus week by week, because the reality is our body's holding on to water weight, this, that, all that different, based on our different cycles. Back into days 14 through 21. So after we've done ovulating, things are dialing down. I'm going to bring it back down. I'm going to keep keep heart rates lower and still moving. But I play with during this time, Pilates, yoga, all this kind of stuff. If you think finding your niche of like you're working out, but I personally like love lifting weights. But I just kind of find lifting weights, and that's what I do. I was in CrossFit for a while, all that kind of stuff. But I've had to kind of force myself to get more comfortable with yoga, Pilates, like doing those kind of workouts because it's what my body wants. And then day 21 to 28, this is kind of where in our luteal phase, we can kind of pick things up again, but really listening to your body as well. So Dr. Patrick always says, how you take care of yourself during the first 3 weeks of your cycle ends up being how well or how you feel like the last week of your cycle. So if you really dial in, take care of yourself and your hormones throughout those first 3 weeks, that last week can be a lot better for you than those typical PMS symptoms.
All right, so I put together a guide here for anyone that's kind of like, okay, with a lot of information. For those of you here in person, print off some copies. But for those online, I did make it accessible for you as well to download as like a PDF. But this is just kind of get you started, right? Sometimes you're like, okay, now you told me to go light, blah, blah, blah. This gives you like an example. So if you go to the next slide here, Jen, it gives you an example of something to do for those 7 days. So be like, all right, do yoga this day, do a 20-minute walk. Maybe here do like an active recovery. So it includes some rest days in there too. But always remembering to move lightly. So maybe it's just a walking day instead, if you need more rest. But this is just to kind of get you started if you're looking for something. But eventually, as you start to get into it, you'll be able to kind of read your body and see what you need that day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then sleep. I wanted to talk about sleep. This is so important. So females, we actually need 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. Almost sounds unattainable, but it is. Okay? We need this time for our hormones to replenish and restore for the next day. And then men, they can get away with that 6 to 8 hours. They're fine in that morning. Make their testosterone up. They're excited. Well, we're kind of dragging some days if we don't get that sleep. So challenge you guys all to make sure you're getting at least 8 hours of sleep. But if you get up to 10, it's even better.
And this is a prime example where it's like men can function off of 5-6 hours of sleep and be just fine. And whereas like women, we need more sleep, and we're not lazier and we're not more whatever. It's just our body simply needs more sleep. We are much more complex physiologically and anatomically than men are, and we have to respect that. All right, so another thing we can do, and by the way, these things we're talking about moving forward are for cycling women, are for postmenopausal women, all that kind of stuff too. So this is just overall support for your overall health. Eating for your cycle. I love food. I love talking about food. So one thing that we can do as far as your cycle, speed cycling is a pretty common one that people kind of hear about. I'm not going to go too much into that. I think there's kind of more important things to focus on when it comes to your diet to support your hormones, but that is definitely something you could worth looking into. The main thing I want to talk about when it comes to your hormonal health is to eat enough fat. So fat is not the enemy. It is refined sugar. And here's why. So healthy fats from hormones. So this is my favorite pathway of all time. This is our steroid hormone pathway. I bring this out in almost every single visit I have with one of my patients, and they're probably annoyed with me by now of how much I love this cycle or this pathway. So basically, these are all our stress hormones. These are our female, male, our sex hormones. So our body's either pushing things on our stress pathway to produce cholesterol or cortisol, or producing our sex hormones to produce testosterone, estrogens, progesterone, all that kind of stuff, right? So the backbone of all of our hormones is cholesterol. And so if I'm not even going to go down the whole cholesterol conversation, but which is we primarily get through one, our body produces cholesterol first and foremost, but two, we can get that cholesterol through fat and through our diet as well. So if cholesterol is so bad, then why would our body produce it? But also we need it to produce hormones. So a lot of women and here like, oh, low fat diet is the way to go. Cut back on the fat, cut back on the fat. And I was one of those people. I was very heavy in the bodybuilding world, and that was very much so high protein, high carb, cut the fat kind of thing. Because it does work for a period of time as far as like cutting, getting lean, all that kind of stuff. But it is not longevity wise. It is not good for you, especially for your hormones. Another thing I want to point out here, and Kylie mentioned this a little earlier, when it comes to this pathway, is you can see here producing our female and male, like our sex hormones. Progesterone is involved in that, and it's very, very important, especially in that luteal phase. But progesterone can be stolen into the stress pathway, and if we're really, really stressed out. So instead, our body's not producing enough progesterone, it's just going straight to cortisol, and that can deplete our progesterone, leading to a lot of issues. My main issue with having hormonal acne was because my progesterone was tanked. And that's because I was so stressed out with how I was working out, with how I was eating, school stress, all that kind of stuff. So it's worth noting that stress has a really, really big impact on women. And we want to make sure we're conscious of that.
Right. And then one more thing with fats also make up like vitamin D and all your cells. The backbones of all your cells are with cholesterol. And so they're really important for healing, repair, but they also make bile. So the gallbladder that helps with digestion. So you need cholesterol in so many ways. But here I wanted to give you an example of some fats, just because you're like, I'm not just going to eat fat off, the steak on the corner. Like, there's other options. But let me tell you, steak is one of the best options
Yes.
when it comes to getting your fat sources, but also lots of like lean proteins too, like fish. And then we've got lots of nuts and seeds and eggs and the seed oils as well, like avocado oil, coconut oil, butter, whatever it is, but lots of nuts and seeds.
Mm-hmm. As far as kind of diving deeper into eating for your cycle. So there's this, we're going to dive into it in a second, but we also have a link. We'll get to see it later. So don't feel like you have to write all this down or take pictures. But this kind of concept of we are different, we're the moon, but we're also every season of Earth kind of thing. So we are, our inner spring is kind of representative of our follicular phase. Our inner summer, ovulatory phase, inner autumn, luteal phase, inner winter, menstrual phase. And there's ways we can eat for our cycle that kind of caters to each one. Inner winter being that menstrual phase. So yeah, we're kind of down bad in winter, like, just not feeling as great. Our body's going through this shedding process so focus more on red meat, organ meats, cacao. Dark chocolate is a great thing. If you find a quality dark chocolate, I have dark chocolate every day, like literally every day, and it's a great thing for you. These are a bunch of beets, ginger, more anti-inflammatory things, really, really great for you during that menstrual phase. When you're inner spring, your follicular phase, focusing more on lean proteins is the best way to lose weight. So kind of tap into that for sure, really push yourself. Doing more raw veggies, fruits, avocados, cherries, that kind of stuff. Your body is able to handle more insulin or more sugar, I should say. So this is a good time to kind of lean more towards that way. Fermented foods, always a good idea. Legumes, nuts, and seeds. Same thing with inner summer. They're pretty similar as far as those lean proteins, veggies, more raw veggies. Cruciferous veggies are great as well. And these just kind of goes more and more into all of that. Then inner autumn being that luteal phase. So this is where I'm at right now, more my luteal phase, just kind of feeling it, right? Feeling my hormones. And so kind of leaning more towards red meat, organ meats. I'm a big fan. I have grass-fed beef every single day, and I love it. And so even for my own diet, when I switched from my diet to more of an animal-based diet, and that's kind of more of a trending term these last couple of years. Oh, sorry, someone getting stolen. What's going on? Wait, everyone. A little Amber Alert. Okay. Anyways, so wanting to kind of cater a diet. What was I talking about? Not Amber. Animal based. Sorry. Amber based. Okay. Animal based diet. About 2 years ago is when I kind of dipped into that, and I was eating a lot more meat, a lot of raw dairy, and a lot of berries and those kinds of things. A lot of fermented veggies. And that I felt phenomenal on. And so I highly recommend leaning more towards it. It honestly was more, it wasn't full blown keto, but it was higher protein, high fat. more like of the sugars, all of that, and I felt amazing. So definitely a big fan of, so essentially first 2 days of your period, ladies, have a fat ribeye. That is a go-to. Think about, we're literally losing blood. We want to replenish the iron, ferritin, B12, all that kind of stuff. So that'll be your best friend there.
All right, I get to be the mean one for something. There's some things that I don't want to take, even if you're not cycling, menopause too. So no alcohol. Limiting your alcohol. I know it's a hard one sometimes, but this can heavily affect your hormone balance. And then affects all the other systems. If you remember that Swiss watch principle, every single system in your body is affected by alcohol. Same with our sugary foods. So our high fructose corn syrup that we find in everything, brown sugar, white sugar, those classic things like that, to making a swap for like a less refined sugar, whether it's like stevia or xylitol or some other natural things in one fruit, like just a lower glycemic index there as well. Too much caffeine can be a little overstimulating for our female hormones as well. So making sure to keep that back, especially in the morning, making sure to eat breakfast before you have your cup of coffee as well. Too much soy. So if you're eating a lot of soy, it can act as a phytoestrogen. So fake estrogen in your body, and that's going to throw off hormones like crazy as well. Highly processed foods. So we kind of already get the gist there. A lot of like fat, fried, that kind of stuff can really affect your hormones and every other system in your body as well. All right. So then there's also our hidden sources of inflammation. Bad news, you might be allergic to a lot of different things you didn't realize. So we have a couple different types of allergies in our body. We have our IgE allergies. Those are the ones we classically think of, like, oh, I can eat that, my throat closes, maybe I need an EpiPen, you can go to the ER. Like, those are like serious things. And those are like, shellfish, meat, nuts, those kind of things. Well, right here, these are actually another one that we test, and these are our IgG allergies. So that other one I talked about, that makes up about 1% of the immune system. This one makes about 70% of the immune system. So it is very important to take care of our immune system when it comes to this. But all of these, I was having antibody or antibodies too. So this is like a reaction happening in my bloodstream throughout my whole body. So it's affecting everything. So that could be like the bloating, the constipation, the brain fog, headaches. Found out gluten gave me headaches, and I was like, oh, that's random. Like after you start cutting things out, and if one sneaks in, you're like, oh, I notice a difference now. My body wasn't as numb to it anymore. So while these foods may seem like they're healthy, they weren't healthy for me. But it is very important. Obviously, don't follow my food allergies based on my blood type or anything like that. We want to know specifically what yours are compared to mine. So Dr. Dunn's are completely different than mine. And the number also completely different. It's very heavily influenced by your immune system. So at this time when I got this done, this was like right as I was entering like the wellness way and starting to learn about it. I was like, this is really cool. I had 22. So this is on the higher side. So basically said like I was in a chronic stress with my body. So I needed to heal my gut. I needed to find what was causing that stress on my gastrointestinal system, my immune system. And I'm actually looking forward to retesting soon to see if that lowers. But we usually test about once a year just to kind of track through those antibodies and stuff.
Alrighty, another way that can help support our hormones is to limit toxin exposure. We need to untox your life. And I'm not just talking about dropping the toxic man in your life right now. Definitely do that because that will definitely wreak havoc on your hormones too. But there are other things that can be very toxic to you. So, and they act as endocrine disruptors. So the NIH, their definition of an endocrine disruptor is a growing body of evidence that suggests that numerous chemicals, both natural and man-made, in the endocrine system, which is our hormones, and produce adverse effects in laboratory animals, wildlife, and humans. Scientists often refer to these chemicals as endocrine disruptors. So there is known evidence that certain toxins that are in our products, in our makeup, in our candles, all that kind of stuff, that are secreting certain toxins that are bad for us. Same thing when we put think when we put makeup or products on our skin. Where is that? When we put something on our skin, where is it going? Into our bloodstream, right? So it's going into our bloodstream. So, and how quickly does that happen? It happens in 26 to 28 seconds. When you put on your skin, goes into your bloodstream. So then it's circulating throughout your whole body. So you have to really be intentional about what am I putting on my skin? What makeup am I using? What hair products am I using? That can and ultimately find its way into my bloodstream and wreak havoc. So these are some examples to cutting out the toxins. She talked about soy earlier, acting as a phytoestrogen. So we have to be very careful as far as having soy in our diet, especially if you're drinking soy milk, having a lot of tofu, all those kinds of things. It can lead to a lot of issues because it acts as phytoestrogen, like Kylie was talking about, throwing off our estrogens, especially if we're already estrogen dominant. That could be really, really bad. So these are just different examples of Real Casa and Crunchy are both brands that we use here and kind of recommend to our female patients to use. The products are very non-toxic. They're the best of us while still, getting, we all want to feel beautiful and kind of enhance our beauty through makeup, but we want to make sure we're not using any toxic products as well. The Yucca app and Think Dirty app. These are my go-to apps that I use. They have free options as far as utilizing these. And I think they do have like a paid option as well to kind of get more bang for your buck or just more options. But these are great to use like if you're shopping at Ulta or shopping wherever, and you can scan it and it can kind of give you a ranking of tells you exactly what toxic ingredients are in it, and then then you really read into like this can cause cancer, and you're like, I don't suddenly want to spend $25 on this, mascara, whatever. So this is something that is really, knowledge is power, right? And the more you learn about this stuff, the more you're like, oh, like you almost hate it because you're like, nothing is good for me, right? And then you want to lean more towards the Real Casa and the Crunchy and those kind of products because you don't want to put cancer-causing chemicals in your body or on your body.
So we're here to kind of show you that we're getting you answers with this comprehensive hormone testing. We don't guess what's going on with your hormones, we test. We want to know specifically how your body is because, right, she's going to be different than her, right? Completely different. So we got to know based on our labs. So what if I told you that estrogen is not a hormone?
No, what?
That's kind of crazy, right? So there's actually estrogens.
Estrogens.
So these are all different types of estrogen metabolites in our body, just one. So that's why it's really important. So this is a little snippet of a test I'll show about later. But this is like different estrogens being metabolized out the body that can heavily influence. Like this is like a little protective pathway. We got to, make sure that's doing well. This one can kind of, you might start to notice more mental, like depression, anxiety, especially anxiety. That's a big one there. And then this one could also lead to DNA damage. So this is really important to know that it's not overflowing. So this is like a bucket of water falling down, and we really need to know that we've got good balance here. So this last picture I was showing you is a Dutch test. I'm going to go into it in a second, but this is that golden standard of finding out what is going on with the hormone metabolism. Zoom to the next slide here. But the actual gold standard is knowing what's being metabolized out of the body while what's staying in the body. So we have to know both, right? We can't know how much am I getting rid of, how much are you still retaining? But also, you get your blood work done, and you need to know how much you get rid of as well. So it's very important to do both at the same time, so you have a clear snapshot of that day, of that time during your cycle. It's also very important to do these on the right time of your cycle if you're a cycling female, which we recommend usually take 15 to 21 if you are a 20-day cycle. If you have questions about that, you can ask us what day, all those things too. This is going to give us a comprehensive view of all our hormones, right? So we've got estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, our cortisol, that stress pathway that we were talking about, heavily important to know. So if we go to the next one, this is an example more of the Dutch test. So this is actually my Dutch test, my very first one I did last year. And when I said like during my intro how exhausted I was, like struggling in the morning, I described it as it felt like the day was just kind of going by and I was floating. Like I feel like I wasn't even there, but I was seeing things there. My cortisol was tanked actually. I had like none. It was super low, dragging through. Whereas someone else that's maybe struggling with too much cortisol, like they're really going down the stress pathway, they may start to see it up. But what was going on with me is I was actually so chronically stressed that my cortisol wasn't staying in my system. And then I also looked at the other one. So like I want you to think of these little like circles here as like a speedometer on your car, okay? So lower, higher, obviously. But here you can kind of see all these like high arrows with my estrogens, but then like super low with my progesterone and my cortisols. So this is really important to know like where my body was trending, to know maybe what else could be going on inside and how I can fix it and be very specific about my treatment. So we go to the next one here. So this is blood work. So again, this is blood work. So we talked about cortisol being low on the Dutch. It was also extremely low in the blood. So I knew I wasn't producing anything. But I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have had that validated answer without the test. It also goes into your anemia panel, all your hormones. It goes into thyroid hormones, your thyroid antibodies. So this is like a comprehensive female panel. It also has vitamin D, One of our cardio markers, homocysteine, and then just got lots of good information here that allows us to really dive deep into what's going on with the body and be very specific about our treatment.
That's right. So with hormone testing, it can tell us what is going on, but then we also need to be better understanding of the why it is going on, right? So when I sit down and meet with, especially a woman, a new patient, I want to hear about everything that's going on, but where my mind is going is why, right? We ask why. That's what we care about, and that's where we kind of fill in the gaps and help you understand through specific testing to figure out why your body is responding the way it does. We believe the body doesn't make mistakes. So if you're having undesirable symptoms or this or that, there's a reason why, and so we're going to help you figure that out. One of the greatest ways is looking, as far as figuring out why, is looking at the gut. So I love the stool test. These are kind of screenshots of a stool test I did the last couple years ago, or couple years ago. So we're looking at, I'm not going to really dive into the entire stool test. Our stool tests are very, very comprehensive. It's a deep dive into stomach acid levels, how pancreas and gallbladder is functioning, if there's any parasites present, if there's any overgrowth of yeast. Yeast is a really, really big one, especially with women. So note here, I had two overgrowths of bacteria. So I had two overgrowths of opportunistic bacteria that were kind of wreaking havoc on my gut. Also, this strain right here, Klebsiella oxytosa, is typically related to mold. At that time, I had mold exposure. I had my hamper that I was living in at the time had mold in it. Didn't even realize it. Had a chronic cough, and then a stool test came back, and it was showing that there's mold in my system. But I also had two strains of yeast, as well as few yeast present on this KOH prep for yeast as well. So I had this huge overgrowth of yeast. And that's the thing is I had such intense sugar cravings. And that's the thing is yeast love sugar. So they thrive off of sugar. They're fueled by sugar. So one of the greatest ways to starve yeast is to cut out the sugar, right? And it's easier to said than done. But that is really important to be able to look at, especially for women, especially with our endometriosis patients too. Estrogen and yeast have a similar kind of compound structure, and they can act like a lock and key with one another. And when they create a big compound together, your body has a hard time detoxing that out, and then it kind of gets stored in your body, especially in our endometrium, causes a lot of issues, right? So oftentimes that's why it's so important as for women. It's not just looking at our hormones; it's looking at our gut as well. And so that's what I always try to educate my patients on, especially first day. They're like, came in for hormones, and you're wanting to look at my stool, not actually look at their stool, but you get your stool test results back, and why am I getting a gut test? But this is why we got to figure out what's throwing off your hormones, because the reality is hormones are just chemical messengers. They're just responding to the environment. They don't live in a little island by themselves. They're responding. So typically that's related to the GI. Here you can see breaking down enough my protein. So my stomach acid was really, really bad as well. Another thing I want to talk about here, and these are some examples of my insulin over the last several years. I only brought up insulin because I only had insulin blood work done over the last couple of years. But when we look at blood sugar, once again, blood sugar plays such a huge part as far as women and our hormones. But you want to look at hemoglobin A1C. It's an average of your hormones the last 4 months. You also want to look at fasting glucose as well as insulin. And as you can see here, this was a couple years ago. My insulin was at 6.7, which fasting, we want to see between 3 and 5. Also, our ranges as far as looking at blood work, they're ranges. We're more strict with our ranges because we want you in a very optimal state. We don't want you to just be like, oh, I don't have diabetes, but you're teetering there. We want you to be thriving, not just surviving. So we want to make sure we bring that insulin nice and tight. Mine was at 6.7. At that time too, I was severely addicted to sugar. I'm talking the job I was working at the time, or in general, birthday parties, I was eating the cake, and then people like the cake with the icing on it, and then they would scrape it off, and I'm like, can I have that? I was literally eating people's icing. I was so addicted to sugar, and it was throwing off my hormones like crazy. And big time too, my acne was bad. So we brought my insulin down from 6.7 to 6.3 to 3.3 now. So my insulin is looking great. Did that all without any metformin. Metformin is a big medication as well, handed out to PCOS patients like myself, because they know there's a relationship between blood sugar issues and hormones as well. So blood sugar plays a huge, huge role, and it comes down to how you're eating plays a huge role in your hormones as well.
Right. That insulin resistance actually precede diabetes by several years. So that knowing that right away is setting you up on the right track. Another thing I want to mention here too is stress is more than just mental, right? We think a lot of our adrenaline type stress, our cortisol, but stress is also gut infections, right? These things are stressing out our body inside, even though we don't feel it here. We've got our chemical stress, mental stress, and physical stress. The posture that we're talking about too. Everybody's sitting up nice and tall, and also just looking at how they're going from day to day, treating their bodies. So final thought here, I want you to challenge you guys to think deeper about your female hormone health. All right, it's not coming. Your hormones aren't coming to tell you; they're trying to tell you something. And so we're here to help you dig deeper and find the answers. So we're a health restoration clinic. The Wellness Way is, and we think and act differently to solve your health challenges that others cannot. So tonight only, we're actually offering a new patient special. So if you guys know anybody or would like to be a new patient, if you book online today or for those in person, we'll honor a $50 off new patient special. Myself, I'm starting to see patients here with the Wellness Sarasota as I join the table.
Yeah. So our new patient appointment special, what it involves is, for those that are not already patients with us or know anyone that wants to join, so it entails a 30 to 40 minute consultation. So we dive deep into kind of your health history. I always say I'm obsessed with you and I want to know everything about you. I want to know about your bowel movements, your sleep, your sex drive, everything. Because it's telling me the more information I can get, right, the more whispers I'm hearing, the more I can understand is figuring out what is the primary thing that's causing you to feel the way you're feeling. We're doing a deep dive in your consultation, and we're also wanting to recommend you to bring any external labs in. So either bring them in or email them ahead of time so I can look over past blood work, past stool tests, whatever that may be, and kind of get a deeper dive as well. So we definitely encourage that. The more information, the better, right? And then we kind of give you our plan of care of kind of the next steps that we recommend starting out with, whether it be food allergies or stool tests or Dutch tests or, whatever that may be like. Then we also do a full set of spinal x-rays. We're chiropractors here, so we obviously address the nervous system through the chiropractic adjustment. That also, if you're joining us in person, that entails a complete report of findings. So I sit down with you at a later time and I go through all your x-rays with you, kind of talk about what's going on with your spine, talk about the nervous system chiropractic side of things as well. Those that are hearing us virtually, you're welcome to join us virtually and be virtual patients. We have a lot of virtual patients that we obviously don't address the chiropractic side of things, but we still encourage them to go see a chiropractor wherever they're at. And so yeah, that is kind of for tonight only. Those that are online, once again, I think there'll be a link or something where you can find the link to kind of join or sign up for that new patient appointment with us. And yeah, we'll talk about it. This is the link to book online if anyone. Yeah. And then once again, online, those joining the live stream will get this link as well.
So this, if you want to snap a picture of it, it's just talking about different providers. If you want to learn, we always post a ton of educational material on our social medias. And then here's some actual Facebook groups as well that have just tons of resources. Maybe you're looking for like somewhere to go, like whether it's, just finding someone to do your hair or like just like things that are like more natural. We've got all kinds of options and resources there for you as well. So yeah,
yes, follow us on Instagram, Reels and TikTok, all the things. And then this is that link tree. If everyone wants to whip out their phone, this is the link tree to the QR code to all the guides we talked about. So that exercise guide, you obviously have that picture, but feel free to get that link, as well as that eating for your cycle guide, as well as other things highly added in there. So
there's some other guides too on just the general Wellness Way website. Lots of articles, and then a bunch of other guides too that are free for grabs for anybody.
So, yeah, we'll put that a couple minutes.
Perfect. Hopefully the lighting's okay and you can scan.
Yeah, there's a bit of a glare, but
working from home, a little screenshot action.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Oh, yes. Any questions back there? Yes.
Question online.
Oh, yes.
What do you recommend for birth control?
Postpartum birth control? Okay. So I think natural cycles is the way to go. Like I talked about the Oura Ring, natural cycles. You don't have to have an Oura Ring to do natural cycles, though. You can just when you order natural cycles, they'll send you a little kit and it'll have the thermometer. So that I feel like is extremely accurate. However, I'd also recommend getting some blood work done after postpartum as well to see where you're at hormonally too. But starting out, I would kind of dial into your cycle, when you're ovulating, stuff, and be mindful about that. What do you say?
Yeah, I really like that answer. But if you want to be very specific, like the testing, or wanting to do something a little bit more specific, like the Aneto or cycle mapping, it can be kind of hard because, especially if you're like breastfeeding or something, that'll like delay your cycle for a little while. So once you stop breastfeeding is when you typically really want to get labs and see where your body's at.
Do the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Any other questions, you guys, before we?
Yes.
Oh,
What's
Connor.
one common misconception women have about hormones? There's every
Oh my gosh. Okay. Who asked this question? I'm just curious. Yeah, I was like, that's my best friend. Juliet, hey, honey. Okay. Repeat the question. What's the most empowering fact?
and what's the most
Yeah.
When I said earlier, where hormones aren't out to get you, they're the messenger. They're trying to tell you what's going on. Some people are like, oh, I have all these hormonal imbalances. Like, I want to suppress it with some kind of drug or ibuprofen or all these other things. Your body's trying to tell you something, right? So, like when she said it's whispering before it screams, those are important messages for you to, write down, take note of, and get answers out before they become become an issue.
Yeah, I was gonna say my mind went first to like listen to your body when it whispers before you hear it scream. Just because I really just feel like that challenges you to get in tune with your body, forces you to kind of pay attention more. Just even being mindful of like, wow, I didn't realize I was bloated after every time I eat. Something like that is telling you something, right? And these are the kind of things to think about in your new patient appointments of like, okay, that's interesting. Okay, that's interesting, right? As far as the misconception, I would probably say that the concept of women can get pregnant anytime, any time of the month. It's just simply not true. So it's not to be put on birth control just for 6 days out of possibly getting pregnant is rather silly. So
Another one for our menopausal females. So just because your hormones are lower, you're not cycling, doesn't mean you should be fatigued all the time, right? You should still have energy. So those adrenals, like we were talking about, are so important when it comes to our energy. So we've got different, like just lifestyle things that we recommend people for adrenal support. There's some herbs as well if you need, just a little bit of a guidance in a natural manner that's not going to force your body to do anything, but kind of help guide it in the right direction. But trying to help your body be able to make hormones without having to make more fat tissue in the process.
Right. Good stuff. Anyone else? Yes.
So all your ways of fixing things, the way I sound, it's like eating correctly, walking, herbs, like that.
Yes.
So wonder if you were already screaming.
You said what?
What if you're already screaming?
Oh, yeah. It's you're screaming. Got it. Your body's screaming at you. Well, that's when we would want to get specific testing because testing is going to confirm what those screams are. So that's where I'd want to, dive deeper into your health and understand, is it more GI? Like, is there parasites present? Is there overgrowth of yeast? All that kind of stuff. Or is your cortisol actually just tanked, and see that kind of stuff through Dutch and blood work. We also have like immune panels. We dive into mold mycotox, especially living in Florida. We have a lot of mold patients, and mold can wreak havoc on your body. And you have to go through a detox process with that. So it can kind of manifest in a lot of different ways. So yeah, we do testing to figure out what exactly those screams are. Then based on that testing, we give specific individualized supplementation. A lot of it is like herbs. Our herbs are very, very the best of the best, all organic, very concentrated, that can have phenomenal therapeutic effects on our physiology, as well as other supplements as well. And then we do dial in a little bit with diet, lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. It goes along this way. So.
Well answered. Do we have a question here?
Yeah. So my mom, she's 65, and she had a really hard time like losing weight. She eats healthy, all that kind of stuff. But she started intermittent fasting. She wanted to be here, so I'm asking for her.
Yeah.
She'll go like 16 to 18 hours, and it's really helped. Like she's lost
awesome.
10 pounds so far.
Yeah.
Is that bad for her? Like, what do you think about intermittent or fasting?
With fasting, especially with cycling women, it is a stress to our body, right? So stress is a good and bad thing. It's the cute stresses are good, like working out is a stress to our body. If I were to go out and run right now, my heart rate would be up, all that kind of, my body would have a response. So the acute stresses are good. Fasting is a stress to the body. Cold plunge, sauna, those things are stresses. It's the chronic stresses we don't want to have. I am more hesitant with women that are cycling, that when it comes to their hormones fluctuating when it comes to fasting. However, your mom being 65, I'm sure she isn't cycling anymore. So there is more like leeway there. So I definitely think seeing that she's having good benefits. I just think too, it comes down to also supporting her adrenals, supporting her stress as well. What are your thoughts?
I think a lot of it could come down to like blood sugar. If she was having blood sugar regulation patterns, I mean, obviously I don't know that because we haven't seen anything, but if you're having a lot of blood sugar problems and all of a sudden, you cut out a lot of the sugars and things like that, you're going to start to see a change in your body as well. So.
Okay. Will it does it mess up your hormones when you've already gone through menopause if you're fasting?
It can have obviously an impact on her hormones, but I wouldn't say it's not going to have as detrimental of an effect on her hormones as it would for like if you were to fast kind of thing. So it kind of depends. I don't know. How often is she doing, like every day she's doing intermittent fasting kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it could be kind of a chronic stress to her
Yeah.
body, could lead to
you
some
think?
cortisol issues,
Good.
and then eventually affect some adrenals. But I mean,
I'll send her to you guys.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say we'd love to meet with her.
I just wanted to give her like,
Yeah,
okay to be
gotcha.
a mom.
got a question
Yes.
back there.
I have 2 questions from the intro read.
Wow, yeah.
My hormone levels are in the tank. I'm a senior, had 2 strokes. What can I take naturally?
Take it away, Kylie.
So when it comes to like naturally wanting to bring hormone levels back up, it's finding what's tanking them to begin with. All right. Just because you're in menopause doesn't mean they should be below sea level, right? They should be maintaining. So maybe that is a chronic gut infection. So we can't just tell you, okay, take this killer herb, it's going to fix all your problems. We actually have to know what's going on and what's stressing out your body, which is how we, handle that here at the Wellness Way. So.
Yep. It's good.
Do you have a question? No. Okay. I just had surgery to take 25 fibroids out. The surgery was March 25th. I've been taking a hormone pill that stops my period for 1 year and 6 months. I just stopped taking the medication and will be getting my period back soon. How long should I wait to do a Dutch test?
That's a great question. So we typically like to see after 3 cycles. So this is like a situation like this, but also say you got off birth control. I like to have my girls wait 3 cycles, like 3 full-blown periods until we dive into Dutch test, any blood work or anything like that. So, yes.
So with the Dutch test, because I was going to ask about cortisol
Okay.
levels to find out where you're at with that. So I see that that's one of the things that it does test for,
Yes.
along with a lot of other things.
Yes.
Can you do the Dutch test at home? Is that how it works? And then bring it in? Because there's a lot of information as far as results. Would you go over the results with us?
Yes. So the Dutch test is you would purchase it here. It's an at-home test. Same with our stool test as well. You do it at home and then you mail it out. We get emailed the results and then we reach out to you to then sit down and have an in-person or virtual consultation going through all your testing. And that second appointment would be your test read appointment, and we would go through all your testing together. So yeah, it's a urine test that you do at home.
And that urine test would actually be taken in that same day, but it's 4 different times throughout the day. So that way you're not just getting one reading on your cortisol, you're seeing how it's trending throughout the day. So that way, like when she said she was tired in the morning but wired at night, you could probably see the cortisol go up.
Yeah.
Like it literally shows you and validates your symptoms right there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Great questions, guys. All right. Thank you all for the questions. Thank you for coming. We look forward to potentially seeing you. I know some of you are already patients here, but thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope you have a great rest of your night. So awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Also, this was my first talk, and it's over.
Yeah. And it's